Welcome back, one and all, and thank you for joining me today. As always, I am Daniel Blake, and in 2023, I joined one of the world's fastest growing cults and became a true soul. Raise the absolute! I am, of course, referring to the global phenomenon and Game of the Year winner, Baldur's Gate 3. Now, this game was globally acclaimed and for very good reason. Not only was this John through Faerun one of the best new RPGs that we have had in recent memory, but was also super welcoming to both new players of the genre as well as veterans, and gave an experience that anybody could possibly enjoy. You could easily spend 2 hours creating your first character and enjoy every second of the experience. And then immediately afterwards, you get this rich band of companions to go along with you on your quest if you so choose. Now, maybe you're a pacifist that wants the best possible ending and to harm absolutely no one, or you're the other end of the spectrum and an absolute psychopath that wants to destroy the world and dominate it. Regardless of what your choice is, Baldur's Gate lets you do either one of those and every other option in between. It truly is a very well written and deep story that you can get yourself involved in. Just once again, expect that you're going to be about 100 hours in before you finish the game. With it being such a massive world, just absolutely dripping with interesting characters and really rich lore, it's kind of inevitable that you're going to end up missing some of it along the way. I mean, who is actually stopping and reading every single parchment and book they come across throughout the game? I know I certainly wasn't. Even if you are one of those rare people that happens to read every single thing you come across, there's almost no way you have passed every single speech check that comes across the game unless you're saving every dialogue, and honestly, that's got to kind of break up the experience in a very unenjoyable way. So maybe you have seen everything, but I don't know. I do have to question what your experience with Baldur's Gate was in other games if that's the case. As much as I love such a vast and well-written world, it can be very easy to miss some key information and context regarding some of the most important NPCs and world events that happen throughout Baldur's Gate 3. And that kind of brings me into today's topic. As you travel through the shadow-cursed lands of Act 2, you will inevitably stumble across the Thorms, a strange and powerful family that resides in the Blighted region. But before we go any further, please consider this your official spoiler warning for Act 2. There are some key characters we will be talking about throughout this episode, so I would hate to spoil anything for you if you haven't experienced Baldur's Gate yet. Check it out, then come on back and watch this video and we can hang out some more, alright? With that out of the way, let's jump into the tragic history of the Thorm clan prior to the events of Baldur's Gate 3. Other than the last name and blood relation, there's another trait that ties the family together. At some point, every member of the Thorms had died before being resurrected. Let's start with the big bad daddy himself, Ketheric. The General of the Absolute didn't always walk the path of darkness, beginning his story over a century prior as the Selûnite Lord of Moonrise Towers. The benevolent ruler lived in harmony with his wife Melodia and daughter Isabel. However, Melodia would unfortunately succumb to an illness which led to her untimely death. Before Ketheric could properly grieve the loss of his wife, a skirmish would claim Isabel's life as well. Losing both his loved ones emotionally devastated the Lord, causing him to forsake Selûne and embrace the darkness of Shar, her influence dulling the general's mental torment. With sadness and rage in his heart, he raised an army and expanded his operations into the Underdark with the intent of conquering the Sword Coast from beneath. It's unclear but likely that his military built Grimforge and the Gauntlet of Shar, utilizing them both to bolster his forces. However, before Ketheric's plan could be enacted, the Harpers, led by Jaehaera, caught wind of his treachery. After forming a temporary alliance with Halsin and the Emerald Grove Druidic Order, which had long despised Shar, the combined forces laid waste to the army and struck a fatal blow to the general. However, just before he died, Ketheric plunged Moonrise Towers and the surrounding area into an uninhabitable land of shadows using a curse gifted to him by the Lady of Darkness. Death wouldn't hold him for long though, with his merits being noticed by Myrkul, the Lord of Bones. The necromantic god raised Ketheric from the dead, a pact forming between the two. Myrkul would fully resurrect Isabel in exchange for the man becoming his chosen champion. It is unclear when exactly Ketheric first met with Gortash and Orin, but together they were able to dominate the Absolute with the use of the Crown of Karsus's nether stones. At some point after his resurrection by Merkel, Ketheric and the necromancer Balthazar were able to trap Selûne's daughter, Dame Aelin, in the Shadowfell, her immense power being utilized to grant the general immortality and the creation of countless dark justiciars. However, even with the world broken to his will, Ketheric would have traded it all to return to a time where he lived in peace with his wife and daughter. While much is unknown about Melodia, we fortunately have an extensive history of Isabel. The cleric of Selûne was raised in Moonrise Towers, given unconditional love by her parents. When the young woman came of adult age, Dame Aelin was sent as a gift to the Thorms for their unwavering faith in Selûne. Almost immediately, Isabel and Dame fell madly in love. This relationship was heavily disapproved by Ketheric, which became the first of many grievances between the Lord and Selûne's daughter.
I don't like you.
Unfortunately, even with the Moon Maiden's favor, Isabel would die shortly after her mother's own demise. Over a century later, she would be revived by Merkel, unaware of how much time had passed. Something that became quickly apparent was the darkness and devastation that had overtaken her home and her father. Sensing the vile nature of her surroundings, Isabel fled from Moonrise, unable to tolerate Ketheric's transformations. After failing to find Dame Aelin, she would stumble across Last Light Inn, an abandoned outpost nestled in the outskirts of the Shadow-cursed lands. Here, she would send up a prayer to Selûne in an attempt to create a sanctuary within the darkness. Even after 100 years, the goddess replied, purging the area around Isabel's new home so long as she lived. Before long, the purified location would be found by Jaheira and her Harpers, who formed an immediate alliance with the cleric to take down Ketheric at all costs. However, it was not anger or vengeance that pushed Isabel to rebellion against her father, but the love and desire to see him freed from his torment. The remaining three Thorms are a bit more shrouded in mystery and take some digging to understand who they are and their motivations, but I'll try my best. Unlike Ketheric and Isabel, these other relatives were disfigured upon their revival, becoming more abominable in appearance and mentality. Starting with the least changed individual, Malus Thorm is a fanatical worshipper of Shar and Ketheric's uncle. The Mad Zealot is infatuated with the torture of mortals, believing that suffering is the ultimate form of pleasure and devotion to the Dark Goddess. He is shown to be a manipulative teacher of sorts to the many sisters that roam the House of Healing, a former infirmary for the sick and wounded of Moonrise. In life, the Doctor ran the establishment, however at some point during Ketheric's expansion, the building was transitioned to a location to assist the Dark Justiciars. It is unknown if his limbs were augmented before or after his resurrection. Regardless of who he was before, there is no question that Malus became a menace to any unfortunate enough to receive his treatments. Before the Shadow Curse gripped Moonrise, the lands were a popular travel route for those looking to journey to the city of Baldur's Gate. One way in which Ketheric would generate income for his territory was to build a toll house and charge travelers a small fee. To ensure the finances were being properly kept, he assigned this task to Geringoth Thorm as its treasurer. While their relationship is never revealed, it's obvious she was someone Ketheric held in high esteem, and she was incredibly loyal to him. Whether by the general's orders or by her own volition, Geringoth began extorting merchants that would pass through the toll house, their gold fueling her intense greed. However, once darkness overtook Moonrise, the toll house was abandoned for use by all except its loyal manager, who continued to collect from any unfortunate enough to somehow survive the Shadow Curse and pass through. Geringoth's duties surpassed death, even if underneath her golden exterior she despised the very actions she was committing. Lastly, we come to the most peaceful of the monsters trio, Theobald Thorm. The massive bartender of Waning Moon Inn is likely its proprietor both in his first as well as his second lives. It is unconfirmed, but highly likely that he is the child of Ketheric, who spawned another offspring sometime after the death of Melodia and Isabel. However, unlike with his daughter, Ketheric never truly treated Theobald as family, claiming that Isabel was his only descendant and completely disregarding his bastard son. With that said, it seems likely that the inn was gifted to him by the general, which is one of the few parental actions he would ever make towards Theobald. Even with his existence being mostly ignored by Ketheric, the man doesn't seem to hold any ill will towards his father and talks about him with respect. Make sure to accept a drink from him if offered. Theobald is open and cordial towards the guests of his bar, unless you deny his hospitality. It's safe to say the Thorms are the most interesting family throughout the entirety of Baldur's Gate 3, their history being packed full of love and loss, conquest and devastation, the divine and the damned. But that will bring an end to this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you know anything else about the Thorms that I didn't cover or have any comments you'd like to make, please feel free to leave them down below. And most of all, guys, I just really appreciate you stopping by here. Leaving a like and subscribe would be fabulous and goes a really, really long way towards helping out the channel. And I do have a Patreon in my bio if you're feeling extra generous, but no pressure there whatsoever. Any love you're willing to give, I'm more than happy to receive. So thank you once again. I hope you have just the most wonderful day, and we will talk more soon. Deuces!